How do authors get ideas for stories? I'm an author and I've had hundreds of ideas through the years, but you don't see ideas, they're invisible, they're in our heads. So when we ask our students to write stories and when we begin the writing process having them come up with ideas, I think it's a challenge sometimes for them to understand that there's different ways to get ideas. And I think a great way to begin that conversation is not to start with their own ideas, but to start with other authors' ideas. To talk with your students about how did this author get the idea for their story, or that author get the idea for their story. When you read picture books, when you read early chapter books, talk about that. You may not always find the way the author came up with an idea, but just talking about it I think will help the process and help students begin to think about how other people get ideas, and maybe they can use some of those strategies to come up with getting their own ideas. When you read stories with your students, read books cover to cover. You may find hints about how the author gets ideas, whether it's in the dedication, whether it's in the back matter of the book, whether it's in the author bio. You might visit an author's website and maybe they have information on there about how they came up with ideas for stories. But have that discussion and talk about it. I'd like to share with you the way I came up with a few of ideas for a few of my stories. One of them, School Picture Day, is about a class picture, but the idea started with a family picture, a family photo. It was holiday time and our family was going to get a family photo taken so we could give it for presents for Christmas. And our daughter, who was only a year and a half old at the time, had a sick belly that day. She didn't feel very well. So we're like, do we go for the photo or don't we? We ended up going, but in some of the pictures she just looked like, Mom, I don't feel very well. Afterwards, I thought about that and I thought, could that be an idea for a story? And so I wrote a family photo story where things kept going wrong. One of the kids had issues for this family photo, but that didn't work very well. And then I got the idea for a school picture story and I thought, well, I'll have a little boy cause problems. When it finally worked is when I came up with my character, Josephina Carolina Wadashina the First. And she wouldn't stay still for School Picture Day because she was always doing some highfalutin fidgeting, fiddling, fuddling, and footballing. So I started with the idea of my daughter who wasn't feeling very well, and it grew into this idea of a school picture and a kid causes chaos as they're fiddling with things during the school pictures. So that's how that idea came to be. It sort of grew and grew as it went along. Another one of my stories and how I came up with the idea is The Dump Man's Treasures. And I got that idea by actually a conversation with some people. I was doing a book signing and some people came up and they shared a story about their dump in their local town, and their dump man, when someone threw away books, donated them to the library. Well, come to find out, it was the library that had thrown the books away in the first place. When they told me that, I thought, oh, that's such a funny story. And I said, may I use that? And I took their names and they let me use their idea. But I sat on it for a couple of years because that was a funny incident, but it really wasn't a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. When I wrote The Dump Man's Treasures, one day I had an aha moment and I realized, ooh, what if I have a dump man who won't let anyone throw away books? He loves them. But then the surprise at the end is the dump man does not know how to read. So that wasn't in the real story. That's something I added. So I had an idea of a dump man who loved books, just like those other people's dump man, but he loved them and he didn't know how to read. So that's sort of growing the idea a little more. Let me share with you a few other books quickly. When you look at a book, Rosie Stories by Cynthia Voigt, if you look in the back of the book where there is the author blurb, it says, Cynthia Voigt lives in Maine without her beloved dog Rosie now, but with Tazzy, Jessica, and Peter who play important supporting roles. So simply by reading the author bio, what we realize is these Rosie stories in this early chapter book are based on a dog that Cynthia Voigt really had, a dog who probably was lively and had lots of adventures, just like this Rosie. Or If you look at The Lighthouse Christmas by Tony Buzzio with illustrations by Nancy Carpenter, The Lighthouse Christmas is a story of some kids on an island, and it looks like they won't have Christmas because they're on an island that's isolated and they're not going to be able to have Christmas. Their mom passed away the year before, but on Christmas Day there's this whirling sound and buzz, and it's actually an airplane that comes and delivers presents, drops them on the island for the kids, which is a great idea. And if you look at the author note in the back of the book, author Tony Buzzio based this on the Flying Santa service, which was started in 1929. So there really was a Flying Santa service that brought presents to lighthouse keepers and their families as a way to say thank you for all the work that they did. So cool that it started with something true, and then she turned it into a fictional story. The final book, Pond Babies by Catherine Falwell. She's the author and the illustrator. And if you look at the back of the book, the flap in the back, it says Catherine Falwell lives and works next to Frog Song Pond in Gorham, Maine. The pond and its creatures have been featured in this book and many of Catherine's other books. So she lives on a pond and observes the animals by the pond, so it makes sense she would do a book called Pond Babies, which is sort of a combination of some nonfiction because she lets us know what the animals really do, but also a little bit of fiction in terms of a child enjoying and doing some of the actions of the animals in this story. So those are a few examples of how authors get their ideas. So again, have that conversation with your students, talk about how authors get ideas, and maybe keep a running list in the classroom of, oh, this author got an idea from something that really happened, or this one was based on some research they did, or maybe this was based on an historical event. Kind of keep a running list, and I think that you'll find that your students then can use some of those ideas that authors get to get their ideas, to get ideas for their own stories, if that makes sense. Have fun getting ideas.